Welcome, nutritionradio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, university nutrition professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Nutrition Radio. We've got Sean and Gaby Fairbanks one last time today, and we're going to talk about the usual four things. Let's run down them before we even do the intro so you can see if you want to stick around. We're going to talk about sort of a food trend. It's quite different for athletes, I think, but electrolyte drinks and how they help with hydration. Then we'll talk about the food science behind eggs and some thoughts and opinions on that as well. A weight management tips section is going to cover things like snacks, purse and car snacks. We've touched on that before. I mean, convenience is key. We'll talk about that. Then we're going to end with a taste test. We're going to look at these RX bars. If you haven't tried them before, we're going to talk about them, like the nutritional content. Would we recommend them? What do they taste like? We'll do a live taste test. We've each picked out one flavor, and we're going to try them on the air, and we'll see if we like them. Having said that, you know from the intro, I am Lonnie Lowry. I was a professor for 20 years. Now I'm a food industry and an academic consultant, just trying to help out food companies and universities do their thing. Yeah, and we have our currently our favorite co-host here today. So you guys go ahead.
I'm Sean Fairbanks. I've been tattooing for, since 95. Been powerlifting the last couple of years. Been kind of lifting off and on most of my life. And we used to go out and get a lot of firewood in the fall. Luckily, we don't have to anymore.
And I am Gaby Fairbanks. I am from Guatemala. I am a mom. And I have been powerlifting for the last 2 years. And I also, I'm a Latin dancer.
Right on. All right, let's get into our topics here. Oh, by the way, everybody, Gaby's background coming from Guatemala is going to play into our topic about eggs. If you're wondering why, you'll find out. Anyway, so first this trend. Sean or Gaby, can you tell me why are you interested in the electrolyte hydration trend thing?
Market news, food and fitness trends.
We got turned on to the LMNT packets 2 years ago. I've got some friends that do the liquid IV. My son brought up the other day that this Prime drink that's out. It's kind of an energy drink with electrolytes in it. So he was mentioning that. And then I was recently reading through the Essentials for Strength and Conditioning book, and there was a section on electrolytes in there that just talks about the loss in sweat. Mm-hmm. The sodium chloride and potassium, magnesium, calcium. Mentioned that if you're just drinking water, that you can actually, dilute your blood levels of sodium. And I thought that was kind of interesting because for so many years, again, I drink so much water when I eat that I'm actually downing, a gallon to a gallon and a half of water pretty much every day. And I never really thought to put salt into it. And then, of course, you grow up thinking that, salt is something that you got to kind of regulate. But, in the last couple of years, we realized, when you're eating more of a whole foods diet and you're not eating out and not as much processed stuff, you're actually not getting as much salt into the system. And so, over the last couple of years, using the electrolyte packets, especially on days when you're out in the yard working, out in the gym working, I've actually found I suffer migraines. And one of the things, just in tracking my food the last few years, I noticed hydration plays a huge role in triggering, my migraines getting triggered. So if I'm dehydrated or if I'm not getting the water in, and if I grab one of those salt packets right as my migraines are hitting, sometimes that can cut down on the visual distortion that happens at the beginning of the migraine. Doesn't do a whole lot for cutting down on the headache, but it does kind of get me through that visual section a little bit faster. So I thought it might be something interesting to kind of take a look at.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, just for all the listeners, sodium and chloride, potassium, calcium, magnesium, they're just minerals, right? They carry an electrical charge. They disperse in water. I think it's important for people to understand. I see a lot of these bodybuilder type guys walk around with a gallon jug of, if it's distilled water, that's probably not a great idea. I mean, tap water has a certain amount of minerals in it. Your body, obviously, think saline solution, right? Anybody who wears contacts knows that you touch a little bit of that to your tongue, that's salty. We're salt water. We're not H2O distilled water. That would be very bad. They try to run IV or even put that in your eyes. That would be very bad. So there's a natural mineral content in the human body. I do think, well, my bias anyway, is that fitness people, they get overexcited about sodium, maybe. You do need some, but I'm guessing 80 or 90% of Americans at least way overdo the sodium. I recently did my diet on MyFitnessPal, just logged it, and I was stunned. I was higher in sugar and in sodium than I thought. And I mean, I eat a lot like you guys do. You know, I have my like overnight oats in the morning with blueberries, and you know, the way I eat eggs, we're going to talk about eggs today, a lot of the things that I do, and I was still high. Now, I do think if you are an athlete and you're exercising in the heat for more than, let's say, 90 minutes or something like that, if you obviously nausea and vomiting, you're going to lose electrolytes. If you're on diuretic drugs, and I know some people in weight class sports do that, well, loop diuretics especially, you'll lose copious amounts of sodium, potassium. So you got to think about all that stuff, right? But it is a good point because it comes up all the time. Like I've had students in like intro classes, I'd say, you know, what's good about a sports drink? What's good or bad? And they'd say, well, it's good because it's got fast acting carbs and electrolytes. What's bad? Well, it has sugar and sodium. Oh my God. The sugar is a carb and the sodium is an electrolyte. Like you guys are confused, you know, not you guys, them. Yeah. So I do think it is important to kind of think about this. I mean, the recommended intake of potassium is 4,700 milligrams a day. That's really high. I don't usually reach it. And like I said, I'm eating fruit, you know, rich sources of potassium. I have my oats and my berries and all this stuff that I do, milk, lots of potassium in milk. I still don't reach it. So my personal bias is I'd like to see a little bit of potassium, I think, in an electrolyte drink, not just the sodium and chloride. Magnesium, too. I mean, men are supposed to get like 420 milligrams a day, women 320, something like that. So at least, you know, let's say 350 milligrams on average. You don't want to go over that a lot. You can end up with that diarrhea and stuff if you overdo it acutely. But magnesium's underconsumed as well. So, I like some of this stuff in that rehydration drink. The ACSM says get a rehydration drink like every 20 minutes during exercise, mostly for the water and, you know, a little bit of the sugar to keep up your blood glucose. But also for some of those electrolytes, they help hydrate you, you know.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that one because when we're dancing, we dance for about an hour to 20 minutes. And as soon as we turn that music on, we don't stop. And a lot of the girls have Gatorade or they have Powerade. And then I have my the element packets that I put in my water. So I was wondering which one's best. And then we were looking at it. And I know that the Gatorade, for some reason, I always say that my favorite flavor is blue or red because I like that in popsicles. But with Gatorade, it has a lot of sugar. It has that red dye that it's not good for you. And then with the Powerade, if you get the other ones, they don't have. If you get a transparent one, all the girls think that it's better. And then I'm always thinking that my element is better. So we're just worrying about that. I know that everybody always goes with their water bottle and have their own hydration packet, and I was just wondering which one was best. Yeah,
I would think a lot of them are pretty much, you know, along these guidelines. I have an article open right here from Grant Tinsley. He's a PhD exercise phys guy on Medical News Today, and he had a nice little table of the recommended intakes in milligrams of each of these minerals. You can find this in any number of sources, .gov kinds of sources, because the government sets these recommendations like the Institute of Medicine and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, people that are athletes that have a lot of discipline and they're really living on completely unprocessed foods, they don't use salt, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I could see them really focusing on it. And it does happen, right? Like I said, really extended workouts, especially in the heat, you do lose electrolytes, not just sodium and chloride. You'll lose some calcium in your sweat, some magnesium in your sweat. It varies by fitness level and by individual. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with putting some of that back. I would just keep in mind that living here in the States, you might want to track your diet like I did on MyFitnessPal because I was like disappointed. I'm like, I can't believe I'm still overdoing the sodium because, you know, the government would suggest that you shouldn't go over about 2,300 milligrams a day. That's really low. You need even less than that, considerably less than that. every day. They just set that mark to try to get below because it's, from a regulatory perspective, it's called a negative nutrient, right? You want to try to not overdo it. Instead of trying to achieve that number, you're trying to get under that number.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you guys train real hard, and if you sweat a lot, I don't think that's going to be a big problem. Obviously, people with hypertension are on, high sodium diets. And I would really recommend, again, MyFitnessPal you can get for free. At least do a cursory check and see what your intake is like. Because if you're way over that 2,300, most Americans are like double that. I'd have to go look at the numbers, but way higher. Then it might not be as big of a deal. But yeah, if you eat really quote unquote clean, and I know you guys are very conscientious eaters, you might want to at least check, see where you are.
Yeah, I sent some of those packets down to my dad. He lives in Arizona, where 120 degrees is pretty much most of their year, and it was funny because he was concerned with the sodium that was in the packets, but then he ended up taking them on his morning run, and he's like, man, for the first time, and I can't even tell you how long I wasn't cramping up. So it's like, yeah, Dad, when you live on the surface of the sun and you sweat constantly.
we were just talking about that on Iron Radio. Like, I really feel like the weather is getting crazier and crazier. I don't want to get into some kind of politically charged commentary about climate change, but man, the weather patterns seem like they're hotter and more humid. Lots of thunderstorms. I live on the far side of the Midwest from you guys. Arguably almost borderline on the East Coast kind of thing. But we were laughing, Phil and I were talking about, it's like the heat index there is just really high. And it's really hard, right? Because when you can't evaporate sweat, your body will dump more sweat, because evaporation is what helps you cool off. It's your number one way to cool off. And if you can't evaporate it because it's 99% humidity, right, then you just end up losing more sweat, more water, more electrolytes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it is worth thinking about that. That's kind of the idea behind Gatorade. Yes, you said regular Gatorade's pretty sugary. I'm looking at a nutrition facts panel right now on the citrus cooler, the orange, 36 carbs, 34 sugar. So what if you don't want that? I get it. If you want to perform, that will actually help hydrate you, believe it or not. Sports drinks are more hydrating than just water, which is kind of surprising. And partly it's the carbohydrate content. It's got 270 milligrams of sodium, so not crazy high. I don't know if you ever look at like a can of soup, over 1,000 sodium. Crazy high. And canned foods have a lot of sodium. But yeah, there's Propel, and there's, like you said, there's the packets and that kind of stuff where they're going to provide some sodium, potassium, that kind of thing.
So Lonnie, when you say that, the carbohydrates help with hydration, is that just because when you store carbohydrates, you're storing the carbohydrates with water as well?
This is an intestinal thing. Yeah, no, good point, though. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, you store that. Let's say you don't burn it immediately because you're in the middle of a workout. You store some of that as muscle glycogen. That will hold water. Yeah. But even just getting across the intestines into the bloodstream, carbohydrates can help. Yeah, it just depends. If you're all about performance, maybe a regular Gatorade is fine. If you're worried about weight management and that kind of stuff, maybe you go for the I don't want to just push Gatorade. There's, like you said, there's Powerade and there's Pedialyte and there's a whole bunch of brands out there. I would just suggest people shop around and see, because again, we don't want to confuse. Just defining what they are is a big deal. Like sodium is so often considered negative. It's not negative if you really are on an almost completely non-processed diet. Your sodium intake is low, and you're really pretty darn sure because you actually logged your diet, or you're exercising for more than an hour or hour and a half in the heat, and you're sweating. You're losing, your urine gets dark, and you're obviously dehydrating. You're losing more than maybe a pound or two during a workout. Yeah, those are reasons to think maybe these water and electrolyte drinks are a good idea. There's the old stories about some of these water drinking competitions that I've heard that they used to do in Europe, where people would just chug as much water as they can, and it killed some people, right? Because they diluted their body's salt water, if you will, to such an extent that they had serious problems. I mean, electrolyte imbalances can cause everything from fatigue to irregular heartbeat and all kinds of problems, muscle tremor type things and muscle contractility problems. It's a good topic, right? Because do these hydration drinks really work? Yeah, they actually do help, but I think it's in context of what kind of diet you have.
I always walk around with my water bottle, and that holds 60 ounces. 64 ounces of water. And we have well water, so we've been spoiled. I think I'm also a water snob. I like how my water tastes. But I'm always carrying the water bottle everywhere, and people make fun of me because it's huge. It's bigger than my face. But I always try to drink 3 of those a day, and I can tell the difference when I don't. I feel a headache, I feel sluggish, and then when I am able to drink at least 2 or 2.5, I feel so much better. I think I got used to drinking that amount of water, and that isn't the same either the summer or winter. Like I need that much water, but I think I already got used to drinking, I don't know, 3 of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people shouldn't worry too much about, like, the electrolytes in your bloodstream are pretty tightly regulated by hormones like aldosterone, and your body has ways to keep this within a certain range. That's not to say that when you start getting into a little bit more extreme circumstances, like, again, nausea, vomiting, diuretics, or even exercise in the heat, it does change. Athletes, Phil Stevens is always talking about this, like, what population was this study in, Lonnie? Because I'm talking about athletes, and they're different. Good point. Average people don't lose 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds of sweat in the course of a day with 2-a-day workouts or on the football field or something. They don't. So they might have to think about this stuff more. I would suggest most commercial rehydration drinks, especially some of the bigger brands, the Gatorade, Powerade, Pedialyte, that kind of thing. Those are probably good ideas if you're concerned about mineral losses and electrolytes and all that kind of stuff. You talked about the amount of water intake. The old school rule of thumb that I remember, just because it's easy, this underestimates, so this is important to know, but it was about 1 milliliter per kcal. So if you're a guy and you eat 3,000 calories a day, you need about 3 liters of water. Again, real rough estimate, which probably underestimates what you really need. My only concern would be, like I said, some of these bodybuilder kids that they're chugging straight distilled water. Don't do that. We would manipulate that the day before a contest, because we're very sensitive to sodium and fluid intake at that point. And even then, you just have to be careful. I've dehydrated before. I've cut sodium before, and it was a little scary. I remember laying there at night, let's just say I'm maybe 5 to 10 pounds dehydrated. That's really a lot for a 200-pound guy, and I probably shouldn't have done that. My heart was kind of racing fast. But anyway, when people do this on a regular basis and they're drinking distilled water, you got to be careful chugging large amounts of that. Yeah, 'cause it's so hypotonic. When you say you drink water, you said tap from the well, right? Well water.
Yeah, but we have a well, so we just fill up the water here at the house.
Yeah, it tastes really good. You can tell the difference between bottled water and the water that we have in downtown Bozeman and the water that we have here. Like, even when I drink water from a bottle, I feel that it's thick and plasticky, or maybe it's just all in my head. But I really like well water. I taste the ground. I taste the earth. I like it.
A substantial amount of bottled water, I don't remember the percentage now. I have some data and some slides I used to teach in class, but is actually municipal tap water put in bottles. And I'm like, oh, wow. Because I think people buy bottled water, they expect it to be really special in some way. And maybe sometimes it is. It's not like people are down on their hands and knees putting each bottle into some mountain spring like they make it look, But yeah, water is not just water. It's not just water. Obviously, you're going to get fluoride in municipal water in attempts to try to, reduce cavity in your mouth, and whatnot.
Right.
Okay, let's go on to our next topic then. That was a good one. Is the science, some of the food science, I guess, about eggs.
Breaking nutrition science.
Now, before we hit record, you guys had some interesting stories. Gabby, can you talk about in Guatemala, what's different about eggs when you get them at the grocery store or whatever?
So the eggs, when you go shopping, you can go to like the big supermarkets that have the fancy, hallways with all the things that are imported from all over the world. But we usually shop at the market, and then our eggs don't need to be refrigerated. You go to the market and get your fruits and vegetables, but the eggs are sitting right there with everything else. So it's never been refrigerated. You do, however, need to wash it because they're unwashed. So yeah, you bring them home and then you keep them on your counter, and then when you're going to use them, you know that because your mom already told you before you crack them, you need to wash them. And that's how I grew up. And then coming here, it's like you go to the market and it's like, where are the eggs? They're all in the refrigerator already clean, and you need to immediately come and put them in the refrigerator because otherwise they'll go bad. But in Guatemala, you can go to the market and they're just out there.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to Guatemala a number of years ago. It was the only time I went. But yeah, when we were walking through the grocery store, they're just down kind of like a bread aisle. It's just a bread aisle where you would, find all the bread, and there's just eggs all on the shelf, which, at the time struck me as like, what is going on here? And then we ended up getting some chickens a number of years ago, and our cousin who had chickens was letting us know that, if you don't wash the eggs, and they still have the, just the protective coating that comes from the chicken, that you could actually let them sit out on the counter for quite a while. And then if you, wanted to wash them, then you'd need to put them in the refrigerator. But he was also saying that if you dipped them in paraffin wax, then you could actually store them for quite a bit longer. And so he was saying that, back, quite a while ago, if you were going to have eggs from your chickens throughout the summer, and then, of course, as the days get shorter, they don't lay as many eggs, you could, dip them in paraffin wax and have them last through the winter, which I thought was an interesting thing that I hadn't really ever grown up around. We didn't have chickens growing up. I know my dad on a dairy farm, and they had, chickens running around and all that, but heard that before. And so, yeah, we have our chickens here in the yard, and we end up leaving the chicken eggs on the counter for however long it takes before the little bowl of chicken eggs is overflowing, and then we'll just keep them unwashed. We'll throw them in the refrigerator just because. But yeah.
Let me start by saying, and you guys probably know this, but eggs have a weird history of controversy. Like, I've even read papers where I think my bias is almost misguided researchers. They'd say, because of all this cholesterol that you're eating with the egg, because the egg will have like 200, 230, whatever milligrams of cholesterol, depending on the size of the egg, that so many eggs equals so many cigarettes a day for heart attack risk, cardiovascular risk. That's absurd to me. Most health authorities now are going to suggest, yes, you can eat 1 or 2 eggs a day, because the cholesterol in the egg, dietary cholesterol, does not change your blood levels very much at all. And the Canadians, I think, have known this for much longer than the Americans, but we Americans do weird things. We look at eggs weirdly. But most health authorities, including, if you look at some of these big hospital corporation chain type things, Cleveland Clinic and Mayo and Harvard, and you go to these different websites, they're going to suggest, yes, eggs are super nutritious. Even a lot of food corporations that I've worked with, nobody's going to say eggs are just bad. Nobody's going to say that, I don't think. I mean, maybe a handful. But, the protein is really high quality protein. It's got choline, and it's got like antioxidants like lutein. Lutein is very bioavailable in eggs, more than in some of the yellowy, golden food, plant foods. And lutein is really fascinating stuff for like cognition and vision. And these things are connected, actually. Really, really nutritious, right? But back to the way that Americans look at this weirdly. Here's a couple of quotes I'll just offer. This is from businessinsider.com. Now, you might say, well, Lonnie, you're talking about, why aren't you going to like the USDA or something? I could, but this is in line with what Gabby is saying and what I have seen. Because I was stunned when I was in Britain and I saw eggs on a shelf. They weren't refrigerated. And I'm like, what? So this is why Europeans don't refrigerate eggs, but Americans do. And it sounds like the Guatemalans are more like the Europeans. British supermarkets don't refrigerate eggs. It's not unusual to find stacks of egg cartons sitting alongside canned beans or other dry goods. This is unlike the U.S., where eggs are found in the refrigerated dairy aisle with the butter and the milk and all that sort of stuff. The difference is the way the eggs are farmed and processed. In the U.S., the U.S. Department of Agriculture requires that eggs destined for supermarket shelves, which are called graded eggs, are washed and sprayed with a chemical sanitizer. And that's an attempt to reduce some of the bacteria on the surface, like salmonella. Now, in the UK, and I'm assuming other European countries, and it sounds like Guatemala as well, grade A hen eggs may not be washed. So they have a completely different approach. Apparently, according to this article, and again, this is in line with what I've heard before, that you could end up transferring some of the harmful bacteria on the surface into the egg when you mess with Mother Nature like that. This says Forbes contributor Nadia Arumugam has previously noted that the USDA graded eggs could not be legally sold in the UK. And that's also true the other way around, that their eggs couldn't be sold here. So that's very curious. I think we need to be careful in the US. We have this kind of ethnocentric thing that, like, we do it right. Other countries don't always do things the way that we do. So I don't know what the shelf life of an unrefrigerated egg. I'd encourage everybody to go check. You know, like you guys said, you refrigerate them. It's certainly, I don't think it's going to hurt, but they're so nutritious. It's just interesting. The food science behind it is interesting, and the marketing and all that.
Yeah, it's also very different because, like Sean said, in the summer we get maybe around 5 to 7, 8 eggs a day. And in the winter, we only get maybe around 1 or 2. But the yolk is, regardless if the egg is big or small, because we have different types of chickens. We have like the Easter chicken, so the shells are green, blue, speckled, white, and brown.
Yeah.
So regardless the size, we always have the same size of the yolk, and it's like a dark yellow orangey color, and super thick, super delicious. And then when we want to do hard-boiled eggs in the winter, and then I have to go to the refrigerator aisle and get those, they're like yellow, like transparent yellow, and they don't taste as eggy as my eggs. So I also noticed that difference. They're not as huge as the yolk that we get, and they're not the flavor that is not there that much, if it makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, in my family, we buy a brand called Eggland's Best, just because they do have, the way the chickens are raised, they have darker yolks. And that just seems, we actually did a nutrition radio episode on people judging food color. And I admit, in this case, that is my bias. When it looks darker orangey color instead of a light pale yellow, it just seems like more nutrient rich to me. That would seem in line with like the lutein content and that kind of stuff. So, and people need to realize too, I think egg whites, because, in bodybuilding, we used to just eat just egg whites, for example. That's not going to be quite as anabolic as whole egg protein. The protein quality of a whole egg is usually better. Yeah, you might get 5 grams of fat with the yolk. The fat is in the yolk, right? Which is why we used to eat just the egg white. But the whole egg is probably a better package for all that nutrition, even because of the 5 grams. Yes, the cholesterol's in the yolk, but like I just said, the dietary cholesterol that you're actually eating doesn't have much impact on your blood levels. Saturated fat will, and there's some saturated fat in egg yolks. But overall, it's not one of those foods I would worry about too much. Again, most health authorities in both the academic and the healthcare and the industry sectors are going to say, yeah, eggs are very nutritious.
Yeah, one kind of question, I guess, for you, Lonnie. So a couple of years ago, I was throwing a couple raw eggs into my shakes. Now they're coming from my chickens, washing the shells really well, throwing those in there. And I got in an argument with one of the guys I work with because he was telling me, that I was going to get sick. Of course, I'm going to catch salmonella. And we started looking it up, and he's like, oh, and then, this says here that by consuming, a raw egg in your shake, you're going to end up stripping your body of the biotin. And so, his argument was, you're doing yourself a disservice by throwing that raw egg into your shake, which I think I was putting maybe 1, maybe 2, into my shake as a way to just kind of get a little bit more protein in. So, yeah, if you could touch on the biotin stripping of a raw egg.
Yeah, that comes from, there's a protein in egg white called avidin. Avidin binds with biotin. It does. I wouldn't worry about that too much. I mean, you'd have to eat more than you are for sure. I'd have to go actually take a look at how many raw eggs you'd have to do to become biotin deficient. I don't think it's a big problem. I mean, it is true. You have to be careful when you talk about raw eggs. And I mean, salmonella is a real thing. There's real salmonella outbreaks, all the time. But so long as you know that you've got fresh eggs, they're not contaminated, they've been stored properly. I don't have a huge problem with that. I do think it's easier actually to get other protein sources in your shakes. I mean, you can get egg powders. You can get, obviously, the whey and casein and all that kind of stuff as well. Like you, though, I used to throw a whole raw egg into shakes just because it would help make it like foamy and frothy and kind of good in that way. I can't say I've ever drank raw eggs like a Rocky movie or something like that. I mean, if you're drinking huge amounts of raw eggs, I think that could be a problem. Yeah, there's obviously the bacteria issue as well. I'd have to go look at some of the case reports of biotin deficiency. I do remember that the avidin protein does cause that. And when you cook an egg white, obviously those proteins denature, right? Cooked eggs aren't going to have this same kind of problem because you can watch the egg white go from clear to white when you fry it. And that changes the scenario when it comes to the biotin thing. It's one of those things, I guess, moderation in all things. There's probably other options for shakes, but if you haven't had problems with it before, I never did. You have fresh, uncontaminated eggs, and you're only putting one in a shake every day or something like that. I don't see that being a big deal. All right. Okay, what's next on the list? Oh, so you guys mentioned something about impulse management. Is that right?
Weight management tips.
Yes. Again, like I said before, I like to eat a lot. But I have to watch what I eat. And I find that if I already have some snacks, I have a big purse. If I have some snacks in my bag that are already weighted in, it helps with that. And also I have my water because sometimes I feel that I'm hungry, but I'm just maybe bored or thirsty. So I will go to drink water. And then if I'm still hungry, I have a lot of Fireball cinnamon candies in my bag as well. And I'll just like eat one of those and that would help me. But if I'm again hungry, I like to make veggie bags. So I like to slice a lot of cucumbers or celery and put a little bit of salt there and then just have those in my purse. So if I'm hungry, I can just grab those, or I have little baggies of almonds or little baggies of cashews. And whenever I'm hungry, I know that I can grab one of those, and I already know how many grams each bag has, and that will help me get to my other meal. But I find that sometimes I'm just bored and I just go directly to eating stuff when maybe I'm just thirsty. But having veggie bags really help us. And then I'm always with my son, and my son is always hungry, so I always have snacks for him in my purse. But luckily, he likes vegetables, so I carry those in my purse.
I think portable foods. It was one of my number one tips, actually, when I was a university sports nutritionist. Like, if you want to control your diet, you got to take stuff along, so you're not, like you said, impulse buying, or you're not a victim of fast food. You're like, well, there's McDonald's on the corner. That's my only option. I'm starving. You can avoid that when you can actually control this yourself. And you guys have talked about before, like Sean wants to gain weight. He's got some mixed nuts or some dried fruit granola. Who knows, something that he can eat and he knows it's healthy, lots of fiber, vitamins, minerals, whatever, even a little protein. But calories, or you could go the lower cal route. But either way, then you're making the decision instead of the clown in the red wig, like I talked about before.
Yeah, and like I said before, on Mondays we do our food prep, and then I make sure that I buy a whole bunch of fresh vegetables that won't go bad or that you need to cook. So like I said, the cucumbers, the celery, broccoli, snap peas, and then I just mix those up in the bag because that way I'm not bored of it. So one day I will have cucumbers, the other day I will have a lot of snap peas, and I just have those in my bag when, like you said, when I'm hungry. I don't have to like, Lance, let's just wait a minute, because otherwise there's like a Taco Bell right there, which I don't want to go. But here,
right.
have one of those, and we'll get home and we'll eat something. Of course, every now and again it's like, yeah, you know what, you want something from there? Sure, let's go. And he'll have something. He's a growing boy, and I'll have my vegetables, or just pick from something from him. But that's rarely. That's why I like to always be proactive and have something ready to go, because that helps a lot.
Well, and just having, a little bit of forethought. It's, having measured it out. And it's, I guess, since you're on a weight management tip, and this can go either direction, if you're trying to put on size or you're trying to, drop some size,
Right.
having something, portioned out where you know what you're consuming, because just the mindless feeding, the grabbing something and munching until you're not hungry anymore. It's just, there's no way to really control, what you're doing or have any idea where you're at if you're just kind of grabbing out of a open bag, as opposed to just, a little bit of forethought and just measuring something out. If you're measuring out a portion, or if you're measuring out, an ounce of something, just so that you know what it is. And that's a lot of, of course, a mom always has snacks in the purse, which is great. If you ever find yourself, out in the middle of nowhere and starving, turn to a mom. She's got something for you. But yeah, in her purse, in the car, just having things, and like I said, just having things kind of portioned out into a serving that what's in it. And like I said, if it's, I'm trying to get bigger, and so I know that I'm eating this many nuts or this much jerky, as opposed to just grabbing a bag of jerky and munching on it, or an open container of peanuts and just munching on it. I would say, in that weight management tip would be, just having things kind of portioned out before you go, and then just having portions ready to grab.
Yeah, especially on the weight loss side. It's a really good point. Like, portion control is real. It's sort of hard for some people to measure out specific things, but you can also get prepackaged stuff. We're going to do a protein bar taste test here in a minute. And when I eat bars, when I take them with me, those are portion controlled. Like, I kind of look at the protein intake. Like, I want to get 30 grams of protein. I'll usually eat like 2 of these protein bars, sometimes of different brands, because some of them have too much sugar, alcohol, or weird stuff in them. But it's a good point about the portion control, because you're right, man. You start shoveling nuts and some of these high fat granola types of things. Oh man. And you're right. I think a lot of people, they might do that not just on the weight gain side, but on the weight loss. They're like, oh, this is a healthy food. It's granola, or it's mixed nuts. And there's data that goes back and forth about, oh, you can eat nuts and still not get fat, because it's fiber and it's all the phytochemicals, other good things. But yeah, it can add up really fast if you're not measuring at all.
Yeah, and also from a busy mom, you need to find some time to do all of that. And I know that life gets in the way, and sometimes I complain that the day that I'm hungry, that I didn't have time to do my veggie bags or my nut bag or any of that. But if you just put a little bit of time, one day a week, and just have all your vegetables already washed and cut up, have all your little baggies with all the nuts. It does take time, but it's only one day a week, and then throughout the week, you'll benefit from that time that you spent. Because a lot of people say, well, I don't have the time to sit down and weigh each individual bag, or sit down and cut each individual piece of celery or cucumber or whatever. And I know it takes time, but then you will benefit a lot from the rest of the week. So you just have to be conscious about it. Like right now, you're going to spend hours doing this, but throughout the week, you won't spend hours, but it's helping your future self, I guess.
Yeah, I remember, gosh, competing. You'll see even some people, like, this is probably mostly in bodybuilding. I know that's an unusual sport for a lot of people, but people will weigh. They've got a kitchen scale. They weigh this stuff because you can lose track. I mean, diet logs, diet records, people are notorious for under-reporting. Oh, I ate 1 bagel. All right, let's back up. Was that a 4-inch bagel? How much did it weigh? So if you really want to know, you got to measure. I mean, it's hard to control what you don't measure, is something I always used to say. And to your point, you just got to balance that out. Like, what day of the week can you do this? Making stuff portable, making it convenient. Like, you open the fridge, all those chopped veggies are just right there. Or you sectioned up some apples, or whatever it is that you do. That's got to make it easier. It's got to help nudge your behaviors in the right direction, and it's just up to each person, I think, how much time they want to spend doing that. But yeah, it's very dangerous otherwise to never set aside time for prep. It's almost a necessity. If you want to control your diet, you've got to prepare this stuff. Otherwise, we were talking about sodium earlier, or sugar. Sodium and sugar intakes are going to be so high. And I mean added sugars. I don't just mean what's in your apple or your banana or whatever. If you just live on the convenient side, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, food is a business. And so, I mean, the idea is to get you to consume and then want to consume more. So, I mean, if you're just kind of going about wandering through your day and it's like, okay, I'm starving, I'm just going to stop somewhere and grab something, the way that the displays are set up, the way that the packaging is set up, the way that they're, the tasty, easy to consume calories. I mean, if you're not putting a little bit of thought into it and having your own good, sectioned out portion of what you want to be eating, and you're just kind of grabbing whatever, I mean, it's designed to make you want to eat and then eat more. And so, it's just we live in a society, we live in a day and age, we live in a food culture that, it's just so easy to overconsume without even realizing you're doing it. And so on the weight management side of things, again, if you're in control of it, then of course, you're going to be better off. And if you're just leaving it up to the influence that is designed to get you to eat what they want you to eat and buy more and consume more, and then you're just going about, well, I did my best today, and it's like, yeah, but your best was controlled by somebody else that was making sure that their bottom dollar was getting fed. So
right, yeah, there's no doubt it's profit oriented, yeah, and the more they can get you to buy, the better. I guess my comment about the protein bars was that sometimes you don't have to measure. Like I'm holding up this RX bar. It's 1.83 ounces, 52 grams. And I can bet you that's really tight from bar to bar. So they kind of, doing this sort of thing is a way to get some portion control without a scale. Maybe it's a medium apple. Yeah, there's going to be variation there if you're going that strict. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I had a physical therapy appointment. They were going to do some dry needling on me, so I needed to get something in my stomach, so I wasn't going to get lightheaded. I don't do real well with needles. And we stopped into the gas station, just on the way to pick up my son, and then on the way over there, and I wanted to just get some kind of protein bar with a little bit of carbs in it. I was surprised. I hadn't been in a gas station in a while and gone down kind of the protein bar aisle, which now it's an entire aisle. I was surprised at how many protein bars they had and how many of them were like birthday cake, chocolate chip, fudge, cookie dough. It was just like, man, this is an entire aisle of candy bars that claim protein.
Yeah.
It was amazing to me.
That's a good segue. Let's talk about that. So before we do our taste test, one of the things that I used to have to do in the classroom, we would do a taste test and like a nutrient analysis on protein bars. And one thing is you got to define what you mean by protein bar, because you're right. I mean, you can walk into a Circle K, into a corner gas station kind of thing, and there's all these like protein bars. You're like, this is a category that didn't used to be here. For me, even if you go to somewhere like a Walmart, there is a section for just protein bars. And that often, to me, at least when I define it for myself, it's 20 grams of protein or more. Like they're mostly about the protein. Mm-hmm. And then you can go to the regular grocer food aisles, and there's more like food bars, like the Kind bars that have the fruit and the nuts, and they're kind of held together with a brown rice syrup or whatever it is. Or like these RX bars that we're going to try. I think they have 10 grams of protein, 10 or 12. I don't know if I would call that a regular protein bar. But yeah, it's an interesting distinction, right? Is this a food bar or a protein bar? And there's a million kinds. In my experience, at least, when you start getting into the cake batter and confetti, this and that, and all these, flavors, you got to start watching for the sugar alcohols. I mean, if you start pushing double-digit sugar alcohols, and I've seen some with 24 grams of sugar alcohol, you're almost definitely going to get some type of gastrointestinal problem, gas, bloating, something. It's really hard to eat that many sugar alcohols. And a lot of them get clever. The Quest bars, different bars will use allulose, some of these alternative sweetener types of things.
Rant, product review, or recipes.
What we're going to try today, everybody, are these RX bars. And it's partly because they're pretty close to clean label. The clean label initiative is sort of fewer ingredients, all of which you can pronounce. And these bars have, like on the cover of the one I'm looking at here, and you guys can tell me what's on yours. Mine says 3 egg whites, 6 almonds, 4 cashews, 2 dates. What does yours say on the label?
I got this AM bar, so they have morning bars, I guess. It's got 3 tablespoons of oats, 5 cashews, 2 egg whites, and 2 teaspoons of honey.
Mine has 12 grams of protein, so it's 3 egg whites, 14 peanuts, 2 dates, and no BS.
Right. Now, interestingly, that is not the ingredients list, right? So when you flip over, like I'm looking at mine, there's actually not a lot on this list beyond that. The AM bar that I had did have some other things, like high oleic sunflower oil and natural flavors and salt. They may say sea salt. It's funny how they often will put like cane sugar, sea salt. It's still sugar and salt, Yeah. Having said that, though, so there's more than these 4 or 5 ingredients like they have on the front, but there's not a ton, maybe a dozen or so, just eyeballing this. And I appreciate nothing too weird. You don't see like carboxymethyl cellulose and stuff like that,
Now, mine says that it's gluten-free. That's why I chose this one, because I'm gluten intolerant. And the only extra added flavors that mine has is natural flavors. And I guess sea salt and cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
I can pronounce.
Yeah. My chocolate and sea salt one says on the back, egg whites, cashews, almonds, cocoa, natural flavors, sea salt. Yeah, there's not a ton of stuff on the back. So I appreciate the clean label initiative. It's not quite what's on the front. I think it's a little misleading that they just show these 4 things and then they say no BS. Okay. And if I remember right, and I encourage people to go look, I believe Kellogg bought this company for a large sum. And I think it's because clean label initiative, people are actually getting weirded out, like over super highly processed foods. I will say we need to be careful with that because sometimes you look at an ingredients list, and if it says like cyanocobalamin or something like that, or methylcobalamin, whatever, these are vitamin names, and you have to be careful because to an average person, oh, that's chemical. Chemicals are bad. Well, newsflash, everything is a chemical. Tell a chemist that, and she's going to laugh at you, But having said that, let's give these a try. We'll just talk about the texture, the taste. Would you recommend them based on their nutrient content and all that?
My goodness, this is so exciting. Mine looks very chocolatey and peanut full, and Sean's looked like whitish, light brown with like green stuff on it.
Yeah, is yours? Mine's very flat and sort of moist and dense, almost like a pressed fudge kind of thing. Is that what yours looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite different from some of the regular protein bars. Mine looks a lot like what you said, Gabby. It looks like chocolate with nuts embedded in it,
Yeah, mine definitely you can see the oats. It's a lot lighter in color.
Mm-hmm.
You can see, it's actually kind of nice. You can see a lot of the ingredients in it. So it's definitely similar to the packaging that, there's very few things in there and you can see them all.
Yeah, and mine is the peanut butter chocolate one, so I guess that's the brown in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just eyeballing this right now, it seems to be one of the features with the AM bars is they've got the oats, the 3 tablespoons of oats, right? Whereas the other ones don't. Anyway, well, let's give them a taste. Let's see what you think. Mine's very chewy, actually, for a protein bar.
Yeah, Gabby's looks like it's chewy, and I think that might be the dates in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mine's definitely being the AM bar without the dates. It's drier, which I like because I don't really like sticky, chewy things.
Yeah, and then I think the cocoa is maybe dark cocoa because it's not sweet. It's sweet enough that you can taste the chocolate, but it's not like sugar milk chocolate, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What's the sugar? Mine has 13 total sugars, but no added sugar. So they're probably just including dates. It's almost certainly the dates.
Yeah, my AM bar has 14 grams of sugar, but it includes 12 added sugars, and I believe that's the coconut sugar they have listed on the package.
Interesting. How many carbs total in the AM?
29.
My chocolate sea salt one, which is not an AM bar, has 23.
It's not an AM bar either, and it's only 23 carbs and 14 grams of sugar, no added sugars.
Okay. Mine has 5 fiber. What do you guys have for fiber?
Mine's got 4.
Mine has 5.
Yeah. That's pretty good, Mine has 9 fat. Where are you guys on the fat total?
Yeah, my AM bar has 9 as well.
Yep, 9.
Okay. Not bad. I mean, it's more like a mix of protein, carb, and fat. So I consider these, my bias would be more like just a food bar, because 10 to 12 protein, 20 something carbs, but, a reasonable dose of fiber, and then, 9 or 10 fat. Just a pretty good mix, I guess, overall.
Mm-hmm.
How many calories does your have? Because mine has 210.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, the AM bar's got 230.
Okay.
I think that's, calorie-wise, I think it's good just because I've seen protein bars that have almost 400 calories. And, if you're going to eat that, might as well just sit down and make breakfast.
Well, and a lot of times they have sugar alcohols, like I was complaining about before. The Gatorade ones I've noticed have a ton of sugar. They're whey protein. They're actually pretty tasty. They're kind of crispy, very different texture from this. I can't say I like the texture of these very much. I'm with you, Sean. Like too sticky and chewy. Nutritionally, I kind of like them. I mean, they're just foods, nothing too weird. And yeah, I like dates. And I could get it. That's kind of the binder and the sweetener that they're using is dates, but it's also probably adding, like you said, to the sticky, chewy thing going on here.
And that's one of the things we used to get some protein bars. I think the Premier bars or something from Costco. They were just so thick and rich that I couldn't eat them very much. I'd get about 3 bites into it, and it was just too much for me. And it kind of looking at Gabby's bar there being real thick and kind of sticky, I'd imagine it would be similar. Whereas this AM bar is a little bit lighter and it's not too bad. I was talking to one of my coworkers who's eaten these before, and he was mentioning, he's like, you'll probably like the AM bars more than the other ones because the dates definitely make it a little bit more kind of dense and sticky.
Yeah.
I think he's right.
Yeah. As you know, I tried that an AM one too, and I still thought it was kind of flat and dense and sticky, but not as much probably because of the oats, But
See, with me, I really enjoy the stickiness for some reason. It makes me happy. But also the way it looks more natural, I guess, because I can see that the colors of the dark chocolate, and I can kind of see, I think that's the date and the cashews and stuff. So I can see what I'm eating versus the other bars. It just looks like a candy bar, or it just looks like pressed dry oats. So I feel that I don't know if you've ever made your own protein bars, or if you've made your own like fruit leathers, it kind of looks like that. So it kind of makes me feel that it's a little bit more natural and better for you.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it, like a fruit leather. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I could tell you, nutritionally, usually what I look for, probably not unlike you guys, is more protein. Like, I usually try to go for about 20 or 30 protein. I'd have to eat 2 to 3 of these. And then I'm quickly escalating up to 25 or 30 grams of fat. And even though it's probably healthy monounsaturated fat from the nuts, it's kind of a lot, One of my really gross rules of thumb is try to have, if I'm being very loose, 1-for-1 with the protein to fat, but preferably like a 2-to-1 protein to fat. And these are closer to a 1-to-1 protein to fat, which is something that I would keep an eye on. But 210 calories is not that much. It's portion controlled, to Sean's point earlier. Would you guys recommend them, and to who? What do you think?
Well, this AM bar that I'm eating, I would definitely have one of those around, similar, like throw it in my wife's purse or, in the car just for, I'm starving and I just need something to get me to where I'm going, where I can actually have a meal. I would definitely eat this AM bar again.
Okay.
And like I said, 230 calories. It's definitely not going to be, it's time for my serving of protein. I'm going to grab this. But if it's, man, I'm dying and I just got to get, the next 45 minutes where I can, eat something real, I would definitely have this around just as a quick grab.
Yeah, and I think with me on my days that I can eat more, I would definitely add one of these after a workout and then have a protein shake with it, just so I can get more protein.
Yeah.
I would recommend it. I wouldn't eat it every day, maybe once a week, because I do enjoy the sticky chewiness of it. That was fun.
Yeah, I'm sipping coffee with mine because I'm trying to eat it and talk to you guys, and it's too sticky. I don't know. I might keep these around. Just I like you guys. I think the consensus, it's kind of just food. There's nothing too weird here. If you can kind of think of it more like you said, almost a fruit leather, or I don't want anybody to think this is like a fruit roll up. It's not like a flat piece of plastic or anything like that. It looks like it's maybe half an inch thick. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not bad just for overall food. I would probably do what you did, Gabby, and I know that a lot of people are like, oh, that's so high protein, but I would probably, have a protein drink with this. That way I get some fiber. I do get some protein and, some healthy monounsaturated fat and that kind of stuff, but then I can jack up the protein a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe mix this. Like I said, I'll sometimes have more than one brand, like maybe one of these and one of the Quest bars, because some of those Quest bars, I can't eat a whole one. I don't know why. I don't know if it's some of the alternative sweeteners or whatever they have going on in there, but maybe one of each, something like that, so I can kind of control the macro, proportions.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah. All right. No, I appreciate your insight on that kind of stuff. It's fun to do taste tests. I thought, let's do that instead of a, product review. It is kind of a product review, but also a taste test. So.
Yeah, that was fun.
All right. Well, this is the end for us. So I appreciate you guys coming on as co-hosts.
Yeah, thanks, Lonnie. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fun to do this kind of stuff. And I think it's very valuable for people to hear from rubber hits the road, real people doing real things, what works, what doesn't. I think there's real value in that. So, okay. Well, we are going to end that this week, everybody. Next week, we've got a new co-host coming on, Lonnie Ducote, which is funny. I haven't met many other Lonnies. It's not a common name, but he's been a big supporter. He's a lot like you guys in that, he's been around for a long time. He's well-informed and super supportive of like Iron Radio and Nutrition Radio and that kind of stuff. So we'll look forward to that. But thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.